Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
I'm with Ambassador Ashok Kantha, a former ambassador of India to China and currently the director of the Institute of Chinese Studies, somebody who knows the country very well, knows China very well, follows China very closely. Ambassador, welcome to ThePrint. At this moment, we are talking, I'm interviewing you because there has been a physical face-off at the line of actual control in eastern Ladakh when last night, which is on Monday night, Indian soldiers and Chinese soldiers were engaged in a fisticuff, and the news is that one colonel level officer of the Indian side plus two Jawans have been killed, plus the Indian army is saying that there have been casualties on the Chinese side as well. Your first comments.
This is the most unfortunate development. As you know, while we have problems along India-China LAC, by and large, we had managed to ensure that peace and tranquility is maintained. We had not had any casualties in border areas since 1975. Now that track record is over. From what we have heard, there were casualties on our side, and perhaps there were casualties on Chinese side as well. This shows how tenuous, difficult, challenging, complicated situation we have along India-China borders. Need for immediate measure to de-escalate, to bring about disengagement. I think some urgent action is called for.
But Ambassador, you said that urgent measures are required. Now, disengagement, as the Army Chief General Naravane said last weekend, disengagement was taking place. So why was there this scuffle? Why do you think there was this scuffle between the Indian and Chinese soldiers while they were disengaging?
You know, as some of us had pointed out earlier, the recent set of incidents have been quite different in nature from what we had witnessed along the borders, because there was a lot of aggression on the Chinese side. There were skirmishes resulting in injuries on our side. Now, something like this was waiting to happen. So I'm not really surprised. While there has been talk of...
You're not surprised. You're not surprised, Ambassador.
I'm not really surprised, because I had mentioned publicly earlier that accidents can take place when you have armed people in face-to-face situation and when you have this level of aggression on display. So I'm not at all surprised that something like this happened. It's very unfortunate, but not entirely unexpected. Now, as for comments which have come from our side about disengagement taking place, frankly, I think there is need for a greater measure of transparency.
What do you mean by that when you say greater measure of transparency?
Some disengagement might have taken place. I'm not questioning that. But frankly, we don't know what's the situation along India-China LAC. Whether, the situation which had occurred earlier with Indian and Chinese troops being in face-to-face situation, whether that had been... There are two things, let me point out.
Yeah.
One is the de-escalation along border areas, where troops start pulling back. Second is disengagement from situations where Indian and Chinese troops are in face-to-face positions. I don't know, frankly, what's the current situation. This is one problem we have witnessed this time, that there is so much speculation, there are leaks.
So much secrecy.
But facts are really at a premium. So what we need today is perhaps better strategic communication. We need to know what is the situation in border areas. We don't expect two sides to negotiate through the media. As someone who had been involved in these processes earlier, I will not make any such suggestion. But at the same time, we need greater transparency, number one. Number two, we should not downplay seriousness of the present situation. The present situation is different, is serious, there's no doubt about it.
How is it different? How is it different, Ambassador? You say that it's different this time. Why is it, and how is it
different? For one thing, it has resulted in loss of life.
Yeah.
On our side, at least.
After more than 40 years.
After 45 years, something which had not happened earlier. it's happening. Those standoff situations have occurred at multiple locations along a very wide frontage of the line of actual control. We have seen fairly high level of aggression on the Chinese side. We have seen Chinese troops coming into areas where we had not anticipated differences on the line of actual control. So many different ways the present situation is more serious, different from what we had witnessed in recent years, at least since Doklam face-off. And in the light of recent development, what happened last night, the resulting loss of life, perhaps it's even more serious than what happened at Doklam in 2017.
So, Ambassador, the first thing is that all these weeks, evidently the first intrusions by the Chinese took place on the 4th or 5th of May, which is about 6 weeks now. Now, at least this confirms, if you needed confirmation, that Chinese soldiers did cross the line of actual control and come into Indian territory. Is that correct?
Jyoti, we are all just going by media reports because they have not been any authoritative statements, coming from Indian side, pointing out that Chinese troops have crossed the line of actual control in areas like Pankung Lake or, Galwan River Valley or Hot Spring for that matter. So we are going by media reports. Now, if these media reports are correct, clearly there have been intrusions across the line of actual control in more than one pocket. And in some areas like Galwan River Valley, we have witnessed Chinese troops coming into areas where they were not coming into for quite some time. So these are really new pockets which are being activated by the Chinese side.
So what is it that the Indians or the Modi government did not do right this time when the Chinese intruded?
No, I don't want to comment on what the government did right or did do right, because, frankly, we don't have facts. Reports which are at times conflicting, which are often based on, leaks. We don't know what to trust, what not to trust. But I can suggest what needs to be done.
Yes.
Looking ahead, as someone who had been involved with management of India-China borders in the past, we have lost one major talking point we have used all these years, that despite all the problems, India-China borders have not witnessed loss of life since 1975. We can no longer say so. So this is something sad. It's unfortunate. I think, number one, we need to take this situation as for the seriousness with the seriousness it deserves. We should not downplay seriousness of the situation. Number two, I think apart from meetings at the level of border commanders, which serve their own purpose, I think there's need for raising it through the diplomatic channels at a relatively high level. I presume that has already been done. I don't know what has been the level of engagement as far as diplomatic channels are concerned. But we need to convey to the Chinese side in no uncertain terms that these developments have a bearing not only as far as the management of India-China borders is concerned, but also on larger issue of India-China relations. Because all along we have maintained that the maintenance of peace and tranquility in border areas is an essential prerequisite for India-China relations going ahead. Now, that is under threat at this point of time. I think that needs to be conveyed at a sufficiently high level in diplomatic contacts with the Chinese side. It can perhaps be done at the level of special representatives, because that's one channel which is available to us. But that message needs to be conveyed. If it has not been done already, I presume that diplomatic channels are already very active.
But Ambassador, what would you mean by that? Are you saying then that India should downgrade the relationship, perhaps?
No, nothing of the kind. Nothing of the kind.
Okay.
I'm not suggesting that we should downgrade relations or anything of the kind. I'm suggesting that, the fact that these are serious incidents, that urgent actions are required, needs to be conveyed in categorical terms to the Chinese side. I presume that's being done already. as far as our diplomatic
Yeah,
engagement with China
right.
is
But you did
concerned.
say that peace and tranquility is a prerequisite to the improvement of India-China relations.
Exactly. This is the position both sides have agreed on. This
Right.
is
So
a
if there
position
is no peace and tranquility,
on countless occasions.
right. So if
Peace
there
and tranquility is threatened today, there's no doubt about it. Now,
yeah.
we also need to convey, or rather reiterate, because I believe we must have already conveyed it, that there must be restoration of status quo ante without any further delay.
What does that mean?
That is, we should restore situation along the LAC as it existed before the current escalation took place sometime in April, perhaps. So we should restore that status quo ante. And that will also involve not only Chinese side pulling its troops back to earlier positions, but de-escalation in terms of deployment of troops on both sides. I think that needs to be done. And then we should go into this situation, why it happened. Why did we have incident resulting in loss of life, something which had not happened in border areas over the last 45 years.
So, Ambassador, the Indian government has put out a statement where they have said that no shots were fired. So how did 3 people die, 2 soldiers and 1 colonel level officer? How do these deaths take place if no shots are fired?
I don't know, frankly. I mean, there must have been skirmishes resulting in death. We had
are these people beating each other up, or what are they doing?
I frankly, Jyoti, I don't know anything more than you know. So frankly, I don't know. But from what we had seen in media earlier, there were skirmishes in the month of May as well, on 5th, 6th May, and again on 9th May, which has resulted in serious injuries. Now these skirmishes have possibly resulted in death. Yeah. which is very unfortunate.
So 2 quick questions, Ambassador. The first is that Global Times, which is the mouthpiece allegedly of the Chinese Communist Party, and which has for the last several weeks been putting out very critical commentary, has said again today in response to this scuffle in which people have died, that India should not cross into Chinese territory, and that India should hold back, they should pull back, essentially putting the onus on India.
Global Time, they are known for their jingoistic positions. We should not, react unduly with undue seriousness to what they put out. From what I am aware, Indian troops operate on our side of the LAC. They have been very scrupulous in terms of respecting the line of actual control as it exists along India-China border areas. At the same time, we are well within our rights to operate on our side of the LAC. I would like to add one more point here, that while the situation is serious, I think it's equally important that we don't let it escalate further. So there's need for cool heads to prevail on both sides, to see that restraint is maintained on both sides, and that there's no further, escalation of situation along the India-China LAC. So our efforts should be de-escalate, bring about disengagement, to bring about the restoration of status quo ante as a possible, but at the same time ensuring that there is no further deterioration in the situation in India-China border areas. I think much is riding on ensuring that despite these very unfortunate incidents, peace and tranquility is maintained along India-China border areas. I think we have achieved a lot through joint action in the past, and we should not let fruits of our previous efforts, achievements of our efforts, various agreements that we have put in place, which have by and large worked well in the past, they should not be negated. I think that should be
Ambassador, tell me, in 2015, you were ambassador in China when the Chinese President Xi Jinping was visiting India. And at that point of time as well, there was an intrusion that took place in Ladakh, in the Tumar area, which is a little different from Galwan. So what did you do then?
September 2014, when
I'm sorry, it was 2014, not 2015. Yeah.
and Chinese president was visiting India.
Yes.
Even before the visit commenced, we had reports about Chinese intrusions in Demchok and Chumar areas along the LAC. And there was escalation, in fact, when Chinese president was in Ahmedabad, when
Yes.
Prime Minister was meeting him. I would not like to go into detail about what happened in engagement between leaders of two countries, but I can tell you that we had conveyed very clearly to the Chinese side that the status quo ante must be restored. And when I returned to Beijing after the visit and I had to hold discussions with the Chinese Foreign Office, so that was the mandate given to me.
Was it difficult when you told them to restore status quo ante? What did they say?
So there was resistance initially, but we managed to persuade them.
But did they say that this is not Indian territory, that this is Chinese territory? Did they say that?
We didn't. It was not. Our position was very clear that there was certain situation which obtained before 1st September 2014, and let's have disengagement by troops of two sides and their simultaneous return to positions they occupied prior to 1st September 2014. And this was, this position was accepted by the Chinese side. I cannot go into,
Sure. But at the time, Prime Minister Modi, who was meeting Chinese President Xi Jinping, spoke to him, and there was a briefing to the media as well, and we were told that the Prime Minister has spoken to the President. Now, this is happening again under Prime Minister Modi's watch and under Xi Jinping's watch. So what does that mean, that these intrusions are taking place again and again? It's only been 6 years since the last intrusion in 2014.
These intrusions have occurred earlier also, so let's not link it to the fact that we have certain leadership in India and in China. You will recall that in 2013 also we had a serious standoff situation occurring in Depsang area.
Yeah.
But what's happening this time is more serious in character. I think for the reasons which I have mentioned earlier. What we need to achieve should be fairly similar to what we achieved in 2014, which is de-escalation, disengagement, and restoration of status quo ante.
So when you say that it's different this time, or when you say it's more serious this time, is it because you believe that the Chinese want to take this territory, or at least parts of it?
Now, I would not like to speculate on what are the motives, whether they want to take this territory. I don't want, because since I'm not privy to full facts, so I would not like to comment on that. But the situation is more serious for a number of reasons I spelled out earlier.
Yeah.
Including the fact that it's happening. We had loss of life. Happening along multiple locations. Greater aggression. In areas which were not active in terms of defense to LAC. So a number of factors are there.
Right. And Prime Minister Modi, do you think he should speak to the Chinese president?
No, I would not like to. Yeah, no, I wouldn't. The reason, Prime Minister Modi and President Xi had discussed this matter of Chinese intrusions in 2014 because President Xi was, visiting India at that point in time. At what level this should be taken up, it's not for me to give that advice.
Okay.
But what I mentioned earlier, that it needs to be taken up through Chinese at a sufficiently high level because it's a matter serious enough to warrant that kind of attention.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much, Ambassador Kantha. We hope that South Bloc is listening to what you're saying. And we hope that this de-escalation takes place sooner than later and that both sides agree that the Chinese soldiers have to return to, like you said, status quo ante. Thank you so much for speaking to The Print.
Good talking to you, Jyoti.